This is NASA astronaut Joseph P. Allen, the first and only person in history to physically wrestle a satellite in space. And right before this, he also became one of the very few humans to ever float freely in outer space using nothing but a jetpack to control his movement. So how did Joe end up having one of the wildest workdays in human history? The answer is simple. He was part of a space rescue mission, something NASA used to do in the 1980s, but it's a mission that you would never see today. Back in the early days of spaceflight, it felt like NASA could do almost anything. And there's no better example of that mindset than the Twin Satellite Rescue Mission. This story begins in February 1984, during the 10th flight of the Space Shuttle program. It was also the first test of NASA's Manned Maneuvering Unit, or MMU, a jetpack that allowed astronauts to fly freely during spacewalks. It was basically a personal spacecraft. At the time, there was no International Space Station, so astronauts didn't have a destination. The idea was that they could fly away from the shuttle to reach satellites or other spacecraft. Using 2 joysticks, astronauts controlled 24 small thrusters that fired tiny bursts of nitrogen gas to move in any direction. During the first MMU test, astronaut Bruce McCandless made history by floating freely above Earth, completely untethered. It was inspiring and terrifying. No human had ever been so free or so alone in space. But this mission wasn't just about testing jetpacks. Their shuttle also released 2 new satellites into orbit, Palapa B2 and Westar 6. These satellites were large, expensive, and extremely valuable. Normally, deploying satellites was routine, but something went wrong. The satellites used a payload assist module, or PAM, to push them into their final orbit more than 22,000 miles above Earth. But during deployment, the PAM engine failed when its nozzle snapped off mid-burn. The satellites were released, but into the wrong orbit. They weren't broken, just stuck in a useless path around Earth. That failure triggered one of the largest insurance claims in space history. Both satellites were insured by Lloyd's of London, a legendary insurance market dating back to 1688. When the mission failed, Lloyd's paid out $180 million, the largest space insurance loss ever at the time. But instead of walking away, the underwriters realized something important. They now owned 2 perfectly good satellites. If they could recover them, they could resell them and recover much of their loss. So they went to NASA. NASA was eager to prove what the space shuttle could do. The MMU jetpack and the shuttle's robotic Canadarm were designed for satellite recovery missions just like this. Lloyd's agreed to pay NASA $10 million to retrieve the satellites and bring them back to Earth. NASA assigned astronauts Joseph Allen and Dale Gardner to the mission. They also invented a new tool called the Apogee Capture Device, nicknamed the Stinger. The astronaut would fly up to the satellite, insert the stinger into a thruster nozzle, and lock onto it. Then all they need to do is attach a clamp to the bottom of the satellite that would allow the Canadarm to grab it. Then the robotic arms would position the object in the payload bay of the shuttle, where it would be locked down for the return trip back to Earth. One of the design elements of the shuttle was that it would be able to bring stuff back from space. But this would be the first time that was really put to the test. On November 8, 1984, Space Shuttle Discovery launched on NASA's first-ever space rescue mission. Allen flew toward Palapa B2 using the MMU and successfully grabbed it. But when Gardner tried to attach the clamp for the Canadarm, it didn't fit. The satellite's dimensions had been miscalculated. At that point, most missions would have been aborted, but these were astronauts. Joseph Allen, a former state champion wrestler, decided to physically wrestle the satellite into place by hand. While locked into foot restraints, he held a 12,200-pound satellite steady as Gardner bolted the mounting plate underneath. It was one of the most incredible moments ever captured in space. A human being manually controlling a satellite while orbiting Earth. The next day, they repeated the mission for the second satellite, Westar 6. This time, everything went smoothly, and the recovery took half as long. With both satellites secured, Discovery returned safely to Earth. NASA proved the space shuttle could not only launch massive objects into space, but bring them back. While the mission technically saved money for insurance companies, it became a historic milestone in human spaceflight. The crew redefined what was possible in orbit. Sadly, it also marked an era. The MMU was never used again. In January 1986, the Challenger disaster changed NASA forever. High-risk missions like this were permanently shut down. And that's how one astronaut became the only person in history to physically wrestle a satellite in space.